a special day because not only is it horror month, it's also our favorite day of the year, and that's Friday the 13th.
Which sometimes happens a few times a year.
This year, it's special because it happened in October, and it doesn't happen too often.
No, it doesn't happen that often, but it just so happens to be Horror Month 2017, and it happens to be Friday the 13th in the month of October here in 2017, right before Halloween.
So this year, I really want to do something that's been on my mind for a long time, and I've actually even discussed it with Vince like a year ago, been wanting to do this video. So it's been a long time coming, and one thing about the Friday the 13th films that have always fascinated me was Jason's hockey mask, and if the hockey mask was ever actually real. By that, I mean, was it ever made for a hockey game? Did they actually create this hockey mask and put it into a hockey game where the goalies were wearing this particular mask?
Yeah, I've kind of wondered that myself, and actually we did the Friday the 13th franchise back several years ago. We did when they came out on DVD with all their deluxe editions. On the Friday the 13th Part 3 DVD, all they had was the movie in 2D and 3D. They didn't have any extras to it. But on the Blu-ray, they did have extras to it. There's actually a part where they talk about the mask. This is the origin of the mask. There's a guy on there that's talking about, I believe he did like the special effects for Friday the 13th, or the makeup effects or something for that particular part. He's kind of a arrogant kind of dude. But he kind of says, well, it was just sitting there on my workbench, and I said, well, here, just try this on. You know, why don't you, because they were trying to come up with something else other than the bag that they had for Part 2. So he says, just try this on. So it happened to be this hockey mask, and they put it on. They were like, well, that might work. But then I also have another DVD called His Name Was Jason, which is all a behind-the-scenes kind of thing. And there's another guy that talks about it, and he kind of says something similar, but he says it was something that somebody had in a bag or something. Like they had it in their gym bag or something. They took it out and they were like, hey, what's that? You know, why don't we try that? Did they actually do that? You know, is that the actual origin, or is it this, what David's been researching?
If the story is true, that these people said, then there had to have been a hockey mask already made that looked like Jason's, rather than just creating it for the movie and saying, hey, look, this is, a hockey mask.
Of course, in the later sequels, by the time they got to like Part 6 and everything, they were actually just vacuum forming the hockey mask. So each and every one of them, that's why they all kind of come out a little bit differently.
I did do research, and here is my little mini documentary on if this mask was ever actually a hockey mask. So let's play it right now. Okay, to give credit where credit is due here, I am getting most of this information from the internet page USA Hockey Magazine. So we start way back in 1927 when Queen's University goaltender Elizabeth Graham wore a fencing mask to protect her teeth. So then in 1930, a guy named Clint Benedict wore sort of a leather-like mask for a game, but then he kind of just tossed it away and didn't wear it again. Then in 1936, somebody in Japan, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, wore a goalie mask in the Olympics made from leather in a wired cage. And now we come to, I guess, the most famous mask, and that was in 1959, and that's really when the goalie mask was pretty much invented, and that was from a man named Jacques Plot, and he was hit in the face by a shot from Andy Bathgate. And from what I've gathered was the guy, Andy, had also been hit in the face, and his ear was bleeding and his face was bleeding. So then when he went to go make the goal, he hit the puck so hard it hit Jacques Plot in the face and cut half of his face open. And then he had to go in the back room and get stitched up. So he came back out wearing his face mask, and it was basically made for practice and not ever to be worn during a actual hockey game. But being his face was cut open and bleeding, he wore the mask and then went on to win the game. And then he went on to win many games and many Stanley Cups. And a lot of people, I guess, associate it because he was wearing the goalie mask and he was no longer afraid, I guess, to get hit in the face. That's really, I guess, the origin of the first hockey mask. And Jacques Plot's hockey mask was pretty frightening looking, to tell you the truth. And I'm assuming from that point on is when the hockey masks started getting a little bit more frightening and people started painting pictures on them. Like in the 1970s, there was a man named Gary Shevers, and he kept painting stitches on his hockey mask for every time he got hit in the face. And it's one of the more famous looking hockey masks. And I guess when you get up to the goalie, the whole point of the hockey mask used to be there's this monster guarding the net and you try to get past him and he's supposed to be a frightening character, which is really, a cool idea. It's really awesome. And then from that point on, it just kind of went becoming a standard mask and a wired cage. So you're asking yourself, at what point did the actual Jason mask come into all of this? Well, the original guy who put the mask on in the first game, Jacques Plot, he actually started selling his own brand of masks through a company called Fibrosport Elite. And he was selling these masks in a magazine, and they were called, I guess, street masks. You could just buy one of these masks and wear it out on the street while you're playing hockey. I'm sure somebody at some point probably wore one of these masks in a hockey game, but they were mostly just made for the public, for, like I said, people who wanted to jump out in the street and play some hockey. So one of the big differences between the mask that Jacques made and the mask that was in Friday the 13th was the original mask was very thick. It was made from a sturdy, like, fiberglass resin, so I guess when you get hit in the face, the thing ain't going to shatter. So they basically took that design for that mask and remade it for Friday the 13th Part 3. And the one made for Friday the 13th Part 3 was much more like crudely fabricated, so it wasn't that thick resin that the original mask was made out of. Because if you watch the movie, you can see the mold chipping around the eyes and around the holes and things like that, which is what made, the mask, the Jason mask. So he made those masks from the 60s up until they closed the doors in 1976. And they made a wide variety of different types of masks. Basically, the Jason mask, or the street mask, was sort of the iconic, I guess, outside mask that the public could get, and it retailed for around $50. So there you go, Vince. There is the little mini documentary that I just made. And what do you think? Was the Jason hockey mask ever a used hockey mask in a hockey game?
From what you came up with, it sounds like it was just something that they produced somewhere, and you could pick it up, you could wear it on the street. That you could go to any, like, sports place and find this mask and pick it up.
It was created by the guy Jacques Plot. I mean, he was the one who did the original, put the mask on, and then, I guess, later on redefined it. And here is my Part 4 mask. As you can see how different it is from the documentary. I mean, the thing with this is now that I have learned through research is that mask, the one that he made that you could buy in the store, is not the one that's in the movie.
Because you also said there was several forms of it. So maybe it was one of the forms at one time?
If you take a look at the mask, it's very skinny. It's real. I mean, it's like this one is wide. It's a much wider mask. And I think if those stories are true that you were talking about, what happened was they brought that mask, Jacques Plot's mask, into the makeup room and said, "Hey, look, I got this mask." They took a look at it, and they're like, "Oh, hey, that's pretty cool." Then they took the idea of that mask and then they made their own vacuum formed copy and made it like this, made it wider, and changed a few things on it, and added the chevrons, because these chevrons were never on the original mask. That's something completely original to the Jason mask. I guess they put it on there to make it look a little bit more intimidating, but I think that's what it was. Is they had that original mask, liked it, then they created a mask like it and vacuum formed it, and then used that for the movie.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that's probably what they did. Because, well, you also got to think, each one of the Jasons, Richard Brooker, Ted White, C.J. Graham, each one of the guys that played Jason from Part 3 forward, they all had a prosthetic head underneath as well. They had this cowl underneath. Kane Hodder, all of them. They all had this, like, mask underneath. And so the hockey mask not only had to go over their face, but it also had to go over that head. Yeah, it's quite possible that they saw this jock plot hockey mask and said, and just kind of looked at it and said, well, that might work. That might work as something for him. And then just kind of redesigned it to fit over this, cowl, or over this foam rubber latex head that Jason always had anyway.
I am almost positive that's what happened. So the mask that is in all these Friday the 13th films, especially the third one, is sort of a reproduction of that mask he was selling in the magazine. It's not that mask, but you can tell the holes are somewhat similar. I think they might have changed them a little bit for the Jason mask.
And you were talking about the chevrons, and in the documentary there, you showed the guy with all the little stitches and everything all over his mask. Well, I'm sure they also, maybe they were fans of that certain hockey star, and said, well, how can we, kind of make Jason's mask look a little bit different, but still make it look like an actual hockey mask that somebody would wear on the street, like a goalie would actually wear. So I think that's kind of where the chevrons probably came from.
And if you also look at those masks, they don't have snaps like this. Like this has a snap on the top. I believe the original masks have like a slit, and then these here go inside of a slit or something. None of them had any of these snaps. Again, this was just for the film.
Yeah, this has been pretty interesting, Dave. I didn't realize you did a lot of research here, and it shows.
Finally, I can put this nail in this coffin that I finally got on here and did my research and brought the whole history of the hockey mask to everybody. And if you have any more information about it, feel free to put it down there in the comments and let us know if you know anything else about it.
Then you got to go and subscribe. You hit that subscribe button down there and hit the little bell up top, and that way you can know whenever we post stuff like this, and you can come back and watch us anytime you want.
And everybody, have a great Friday the 13th, and today is a perfect day to go out camping. Nothing bad could happen to you today.
No, not at all.